Okay, I should probably see if this thing works now, right? Before we get started, I just wanted to remind you that if you do enjoy the video, make sure you hit the like and subscribe. It really helps me out. It helps me get seen by the world when it comes to the algorithm and all those wonderful Skynet kind of things. And if you ever want to chat with me about what you see in these videos, or you just want to see me game or whatever, you can follow me at Twitch, twitch.tv/MiscastJoe, and you can come say hello to me there. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I am Joe Finley, and today we're looking at the OBSBOT Tiny 4K webcam. Now it's a PTZ webcam, which means pan, tilt, zoom, and it's also an AI webcam, which actually makes it capable of following you around a room. So let's talk about what you get out of the box. It comes in a really nice carrying case, comes with a power supply and a USB-C to USB-C cable with a USB-C to USB-A adapter, so you can hook it up to your computer in any old port. And the camera itself is very small, a lot smaller than I actually expected it would be. Fits nicely in the palm of my hand. For people who might not know the difference, this webcam actually comes in a 1080p version as well, but that one doesn't have the red ring around the lens like this one does. It also comes with a magnetic mount that you can put on top of your monitor or any other old place, and it creates a strong connection between the mount and the camera. You don't have to worry about that thing falling off if it gets a little jostled or something like that. So before we actually get a look at the camera, I thought I'd give you guys a look at the software so you can see kind of what you'd be dealing with. So here's your basic camera controls right here. First thing we can see is that it's connected to one camera. You can connect to multiple cameras if you have multiple cameras plugged into the computer. Underneath smart shooting, you'll see AI tracking. You can either lock or unlock the camera. It's currently unlocked. That means it will track me if I move around the room. If you choose to lock it, that means it won't track you. You can actually control that with a gesture if you're further away from the camera, which we're going to deal with in a little bit. The zoom under here, you can control this manually in the application, or again, you could use a gesture, and we'll show you that when we get there. Device status, you can set it to sleep just by clicking this button, and what'll actually happen is when you click the button, it deactivates the camera and actually makes the camera lens point directly down, so it's not pointed at you, so Big Brother can't get you. Because God forbid being on a camera all the time. And rather than use the application to put it to sleep, you can also just point the lens down at the base and it'll automatically shut it off. And then here we have some gimbal controls, so we can actually physically move the camera around ourselves to position it just how we want. So if you don't want this thing tracking you around and you want it locked on a specific space, you could actually lock it here and then move the camera around to the desired position. The very bottom here, you're going to see preset positions, so you can actually, utilizing the gimbal and stuff like that, you can create several presets. So if you have different setups in your room or something like that, you can hit 1, 2, or 3 and then have it automatically move to that spot. So then you don't have to try and fidget around with the gimbal to get it just right. Now, if you go up here, we have a settings window and that pops up and it actually tells you what software and firmware versions are on in case you need to update them. The device auto sleep, that's another good one because again, you might leave this camera on and activated. You might forget to put it back to sleep or something like that. So after 10 minutes of not being in use, you could actually change that to go to sleep in a faster time, even as fast as 30 seconds. These are the gesture controls for the AI tracking and for the zoom. You can turn those off so that you don't accidentally make the gesture and then it happens when you don't want it to. If you don't feel like you're going to use one of these features, I would actually recommend you just turning them off so that doesn't accidentally happen. The gesture controls zoom factor, so what that actually is, I can open it here. So if I use the gesture to zoom in, it will zoom in 1.99 times. I can change that to be anything I want, all the way up to 4 times zoom, so it depends on how far away you get, I guess. So for tracking modes, you have a motion mode, which is actually more of a responsive. If you're going to be energetic and moving around the room a lot, it's going to do a better job of actually keeping track of you. Headroom mode will make smaller adjustments just to make sure that you're properly in frame. That's more of a situation if you're kind of sitting here at a desk and you move around a little bit, but it's not so much that the camera needs to follow you so much, just enough that it actually needs to make little adjustments just to keep you right dead center with the right amount of headroom. And then standard mode is just kind of an average between the two. Hit configure video and then you get this old looking Windows menu and you can just change your brightness, contrast, all the usual stuff, as well as camera controls for your zoom and all those other things. Again, you have those controls right here, so you don't necessarily need any of this stuff. It has an anti-flicker. This is pretty standard in most webcams now to try and eliminate any kind of light flicker from behind you. These are the 2 frequencies that it can kind of handle. HDR, or high dynamic range, on this camera, what it's really going to do for you, it's going to take care of a lot of lighting discrepancies, especially for you if you've got a lot of backlight going on and you're a little dark up front. It's going to compensate a little bit and brighten brighten you up. Here's another place to turn on and off the autofocus, and you can use this slider to set the focus if you have turned off the autofocus. Face focus just means find my face, focus on it. Face auto exposure, I find this to be really good, especially with the lighting that I use. Webcams are kind of weird when it comes to lighting sometimes. You want to let a lot of light in, but then sometimes you can find yourself getting overexposed and things like that. The face auto exposure, it's actually going to take the exposure that's specifically on your face and nowhere else, and it's going to accommodate for that, which realistically is the most important thing. Screen mode, you can set this in landscape or in portrait mode, depending on what you're using. You could be doing a TikTok live with this. You could be doing a lecture. So just know that if you're going to switch between the modes, it's actually going to reboot the entire application. Noise reduction, another standard in most webcams nowadays, just tries to eliminate a little bit of the grain that happens when compensating for low light and things like that. Global hotkeys is currently turned off, but if you click here, you can see the hotkeys that you can utilize for the various devices. Remote control, there is a remote control that you can purchase for this. So if you're far away from the keyboard and the ability to use the app, you can use the remote control to make all those controls right in the palm of your hand. Something that I find really wrong with the application though is you can actually see a preview of your own picture in the application itself, which makes no sense because you would usually go in there, do everything to set it up, and then you'd go ahead and add the device to whatever application you're using. And this is what we're dealing with, just plug and play. A little bit of color correction is in order and things like that, but overall it's a nice picture, it's got nice detail, and it has the added feature of moving around. You can see that it's actually going with me as I do things. So if I come over here, and I come over here, it's following me around now, and it's actually quite smooth. It's not too jerky. The autofocus is really nice. It doesn't go searching as much as a lot of other webcams, so that's a good thing. But its video quality, while overall fine, not spectacular, but not terrible by any means, its AI tracking is probably its #1 feature. So you can see how it follows me as I walk around the room. It manages to anticipate your motion, so it's moving along with you as opposed to trying to catch up to you. And you can see with a simple gesture, I can make it stop following me so that I can just walk away from the camera. And if I get far enough away with this gesture, I can make it zoom in and then do it again to zoom back out. It's worth noting to streamers, if you're going to use this camera, it's a 4K 30 camera. So if you're running a 60 FPS stream, that's something you need to keep in mind. But for people who might use it for work presentations or for school or anything like that, it's definitely going to give you everything you need. Now, the real question as I review these things for content creators generally, is it good for content creators? There are applications that it can be used for. And funny enough, they're the same applications that you were able to use for my last video on my review on the mod mic. There are streamers who get away from their computer and go a little bit mobile. And if they're not going to have a multicam setup, or if it's not something they would be able to control anyways, then having the OBSBOT would be a wonderful solution to that because it can move around and follow them. If you're doing a cooking stream and you want the camera to be able to follow you around so you can sit in one spot and chop, then you can pick up what you chopped and go over to the stove and throw it on the pan, that's an ideal situation. If you're doing yoga and you're going to be moving all over the place doing different positions and things like that, and you're also in a position that you're not really going to be able to look up at your monitor every now and again to see whether or not you're in frame, then that is an ideal thing. Do I think it should be used for a gaming stream? No, absolutely not. Do I think it needs to be used for a just chatting stream? No, absolutely not. We typically lock off our cameras, focus is set, and everything's good. Now, the real problem for this thing is its price. It's $269 US, and it's a camera that can do a lot of things, don't get me wrong. I mean, there is value to what it does, but not as much value to the average streamer who could get an Elgato face cam for cheaper. And that's a lot of money to throw around for a business or a school just to have this little camera to be able to follow you around for some presentation. So while I do like this camera, I think it looks decent, I think it functions really well, I would probably wait for the price to come down just a little bit. Now, what do you think about this camera? Let me know down in the comments if you would have a use for a camera like this in your own setup. Please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe, hit the notification bell so you make sure you don't miss any of my videos as they come out. And if you want to see what I'm talking about when it comes to gear with special applications, you can check out my review for the Antlion mod mic right here. And until next time, gang, let's get to work.